Welcome back to True Print for Life. I'm your host, Christina Vera.
And I'm your co-host, Maylin Sambois.
Welcome back for another engaging episode. Really excited, as we always look throughout not only the community, but just really throughout the country for amazing experts, whether it be in leadership, business, finance, and overall wellness. And today we're excited to have joining us here a local leader in Columbus, Ohio, Adero Robinson. I'm super excited to dive deeper into your journey, your impact, your history. Adero is the Executive Director and CEO of Communities and Schools of Ohio, part of a national communities and school network dedicated to surrounding students with community of support so they can thrive in school and beyond. With nearly 30 years of nonprofit leadership experience, he leads efforts to connect students with caring adults, community resources, and evidence-based supports designed to overcome barriers to success. Under his leadership, Communities and Schools of Ohio currently serves 46 schools across 6 cities, providing the whole school individualized services such as academic assistance, behavioral interventions, family engagement, enrichment, and attendance support. There's so much more about Mr. Robinson, but I'll pause there and just welcome you to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I only hit a small snippet.
1/4.
Yeah, exactly.
Of the bio.
Of the bio. But Adero, you've done amazing things, and you've been doing kind of rooted in this leadership work for quite a while. Most of your professional experience has been rooted what seems to be in the nonprofit space. So share with us what drew you to this work of supporting communities and supporting young people in general.
Absolutely. So this marks my 31st year working in nonprofit. I've done nothing else. I had a small stint teaching in Columbus City schools, but right out of college, I thought I wanted to do one thing. And my father learned about this opportunity with an organization called City Year. You may be familiar with that. And it was a really good opportunity, and I had nothing else lined up. And this was a paid opportunity to do some service. I worked in the old 2nd Avenue Elementary School in the 5th grade classroom in the Short North. Building's still there, the school's not. And I was like, oh, I like this work. This is kind of cool. I really want to, I'm seeing the impact with these young people. I'm not really a teacher, but I'm, as an African-American male, where there aren't a lot of African-American males in education, being in those spaces and partnering with that school and those young people, those 5th graders was kind of the jump start of me staying in this work over the past 30 plus years. Yeah. So my dad was kind of that push, either you get to get a job or you got to figure something else out.
You got to do something.
He presented me with this opportunity. He found out about it and said, you should go check it out. And I did. And it's been off to the races ever since.
Yeah. And that started the trajectory of your service.
Correct. Yes.
Career. And you mentioned City Year. So I know you kind of have like a beginning, you were a student, kind of went through that program, and then you had another role in City Year. You want to tell us a little bit about that and what was that like for you?
Yeah, so I did my AmeriCorps year, and then I moved into like a management position, a team manager. So I was supervising a team of AmeriCorps members that next year. I was 22, 23 years old, my first experience managing other people.
Oui.
And it was up in the Linden area at the time, the old school called Gladstone Elementary. And from there I said, I had some struggles with that because, learning how to be a manager, no one really teaches you, especially at that age. So I struggled with that for a while. And I decided at one point, I think I want to be an executive director or go into a more enhanced leadership role for an organization, but I'm not ready now. There has to be some other things that need to happen. So I needed to learn how nonprofits worked, learn how programs operated on the ground. And when I left City Year after being on staff for a couple of years, I got involved with another organization. Well, I was going to be a teacher. I don't know if I was going to be an elementary school teacher. And I said, well, let me test it first. Let me be a sub. So I was a long-term sub here in Columbus City Schools. And I said, let me try each grade, K through 5. And I said, I really like 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. But at the time, there weren't any positions available. I said, well, I can't be a sub that long. I have to get another job. So I transitioned to another role with a nonprofit that's no longer around, Columbus Compact. And we did a lot of work in inner city development. And that's where I really sort of learned how a nonprofit works, how funding works, how to write a grant, how to connect with the community, how to do data, all of these different things. And I said, okay, now this is really what I want to do. I can stay education adjacent or community adjacent. But this really was like, okay, I'm getting my sea legs, so to speak, in the nonprofit space. And that was kind of the jump off for me. And I was there for a long time, did a lot of really good work. Then I worked for the United Way for a bit, or for a long time as well, Urban League, and then came back to City Year before I came to this organization, and was chief of staff for about 7-8 years, and then ran into an executive director role and led that work for about 3 years. Working with Columbus City Schools, I know I got a chance to connect with you in this space, and you as well. And then this opportunity came up, and I've been here going on 2 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been a really good journey.
Definitely a great journey. What would you say was some of your defining moments in your career as you were kind of, making that kind of transition point in your mind from, okay, I recognize I'm not necessarily going to be in a classroom in an official capacity, but still supporting and impacting the work, especially for young people. Like, why is that so? Why has that been so critically important to you to be able to serve and impact young learners?
Absolutely. So I grew up here in the Jogging Park area, Livingston and Fairwood, for all those listeners who know where that is. My family still lives there, the same house I grew up in. Wow. And I grew up going to the rec center, and I grew up going to what was then called the Boys Club. There wasn't a Boys and a Girls Club yet, but it was the Salesian Boys Club downtown. And I was there every single day, at the rec center every single day. And there were always these youth leaders who taught me how to do all these different things, from how to play pool to how to play ping pong to how to play basketball, which became something I really got involved with. And there were all these different pieces about having those adults that were working with us, young people. And I said, that was an impact for me, and including, my family and my father, of course, but having my youth coaches, my youth development leaders through the Boys Club and these other organizations and things I did in the summer and after school, those were all really good experiences. And I'm like, that could be something that I can have an impact on, whether it be from a policy level, program, or volunteer. So throughout the career I'm talking about, I've weaved in mentoring opportunities. I coached a lot of basketball. I've done a lot of basketball training, martial arts training that had connections to young folks, that anything that I've learned, how can I pass that along? It's not everything, but it's something. Yeah. And as a black male, I had a lot of black males be part of my life in that way, in different aspects. And why not at least try to use some of that for other people as I've learned more and became more knowledgeable, and, get folks to trust you, and having young people trust you and showing them something. Hey, this guy knows a little bit of something about something. Maybe I can learn more, and then to see them take that and then to go on and do something great, right? So you poured into someone else the way someone else has poured into you. So that was kind of my motivation in continuing this type of work. Even though I may not get to do the programmatic stuff every day on the ground, I still try to find my own little ways of doing it, whether it be mainly through basketball now, because my body can't play, but my mind still works, and I can point, you can do this and do that. That still feels good.
I love that.
So coaching?
I can't coach as much as I'd like to, like coaching teams. Mostly it's middle school. Yeah. But I have had some young men that I got a chance to just do some skill building with, build some relationships with, and then watch them do well in their, school-based teams.
Love that. Yeah.
I love the paying forward, right? That's what when I hear your story, I hear you were blessed into, and then you kind of share that blessing, which I call it paying it forward.
Sure.
And as you were speaking, I was thinking, how many mentors did you have, or was there an impactful mentor that really kind of helped you shape who you are today? I know your father was a big figure for what I hear. You can tell us more about that. Absolutely. And then also there was another male or female mentor that pour into you that you're like, this really changed my life.
When I was with City Year, there was my team leader when I went through my core year. His name's Steve Stevenson. I don't know if you know Steve. He runs City Year Cleveland now. Okay. But he was really involved here in Columbus. He's done a lot with that organization. He's a good friend of mine, and him and there were some other folks with that organization that kind of poured into me, when I didn't have a place to stay, come stay with us, or you need extra food, or these types of things when I was having my challenges early on. So Cliff Vance and some of these other guys who, other brothers are like, hey, let me put my arms around you. I see you needed some help. Let me help you out. But I think the one that, in terms of this nonprofit work that really got a chance to just watch, even if they didn't know I was watching, but to kind of learn from, was Jonathan Beard.
Okay.
I don't know if you know Jonathan Beard. He used to be the CEO of the Columbus Compact Corporation, which is the organization I came to right after I decided not to go into teaching or because there were no jobs. That organization, watching how dedicated he was to the underserved communities of Columbus, the Lindens, the West Sides, the driving parks, the near South Sides, parts of the East Side. I was like, oh, I'm seeing how he's doing things. So I started to, well, how do you write a grant?
Yeah.
How do you deal with difficult residents in the community or folks that don't necessarily see into your vision? How do you manage all of these different systems that, as a nonprofit, make it challenging to do this work and keep your sanity, that type of thing? So watching him and others like him, I think I can do this. I'm still not ready yet. What do I need to do to get myself ready?
Right.
And one thing he said, I don't even know if he remembers this, he said, whatever organization you work for, try to understand each part of the organization. So go to the finance person, sit down with them and say, could you teach me how to do nonprofit finance? What does that mean? I can learn it in grad school, but I don't know how it means in real life. Program person, how do you do your data? How do you write a grant? All these different things. How do you sit down and ask for funding? What does that look like? How do you manage people? That's probably the most challenging thing that I don't know if we were ever going to be able to be masters at it, but he made that suggestion. And so every organization I went to, and I noticed that people want to tell you about their job. You go down and find it, hey, could you walk me through, how do you bring revenue in? How do you do your expenses? How do you manage the benefits? Who does that? How does it work? Because I'm learning it in school, but it doesn't translate. It's just book smarts. What is the real thing? And the two things I noticed about it was, one, I was learning how to run an organization. Two, I was building relationships where I'm now in an organization. If I need something, they'll bend over backwards for you because I took an interest in what you're doing. Right. And it wasn't for my own personal, selfish benefit. I genuinely wanted to know how you do marketing. How do you do all the graphics for the annual report and stuff like that? How do you do events? Teach me these things so I can learn. Let me just at least shadow you. And I think that was one of the most beneficial things that I've always tried to do in any organization that I've worked for.
Yeah.
And
it's so critically important. And I think, you hit a lot of key things that, even as founders of a nonprofit, as Maylin and I lead Femergy, which, serves girls throughout Central Ohio, there are so many different intricacies of day-to-day operations on top of the partnerships and the work itself. And so would love to hear kind of, as in your journey of 30 years of serving and impacting, the community. Now, especially, it feels very different. Yes. We're seeing a different generation of young people. And we're, just seeing what happened a couple of weeks ago here locally in Central Ohio with the teen takeovers and what's been happening, throughout not just our city. This is happening, across the country. What do you attribute to what we're seeing right now in terms of, so many, even when we watch the videos, obviously people who work in this space, I'm always zooming in to see like that better not be any of my students, or my children, but it's also alarming because it is, it's not 10 to 15 kids. We're talking about hundreds of young people who and don't understand, or maybe they do understand, or, but really would welcome your thoughts and perspective on what do you think is missing, or what do you think is attributed to what we're seeing in terms of, so many young people making decisions that are impacting not only their lives, but the community as a whole?
The most recent one that happened in Bexley, I went to that school, St. Catherine, from 1st to 8th grade. And I remember that Fun Fest activity when back in the 80s. I'm dating myself now.
We're young.
We're young, but I remember going to that, in the summers, and it was always a fun event. So I was kind of hurt to see that this thing happened at something I was used to going to every single year. And I know how it grew from this small festival to this big with Ferris wheels and rides and all the really cool stuff. One thing that I'm not frustrated, but kind of like worried is that I remember all the fun I had growing up as a teenager, going to the mall. And you can all remember going to the malls, to the fairs, to the festivals, to just hanging out on Livingston Avenue, doing teenage stuff that didn't result in some of the stuff we've been seeing. But part of me is like, I want these kids to have the same experience that we had and have the fun. And you're talking to, young people from different parts of town. You're going to the mall and the food court or the arcade or I'm meeting these people or meeting those folks. And it doesn't feel like that's happening the same way. Why it's not happening, I don't know. The way kids try to talk to each other is just different, right? So one of the things some of the young people that I connect with, I just don't know if they have the relationship building skills, even if you struggle with them, that necessarily that some of us had to, struggle with, do better with. I was talking with a friend of mine, we would always, you might have done this, I don't know, as teenagers, you would meet, in my case, young women from another part of town. And you had to learn how to talk to folks from the opposite sex in a way and feel the rejection or feel, the challenge of talking with somebody that you may not be comfortable doing. You have to work through those things and deal with the disappointments. These young kids, they don't have the same sort of muscle that they're building. And they don't have the same muscle of going around to different parts of the community and interacting. Growing up on the east side, it's completely different from the west side. So I would understand what I could and could not do on the west side just from playing basketball. I'll just use that one example. We would get on our bikes or the bus or somebody's car. We'd go play north side, west side, east side. And we knew what we could say, could not say, how we should or should not move. And that would avoid any sort of interaction that would lead to a negative thing, right? Anything that happened negatively would happen on the basketball court and not outside of that. So it wasn't, in my case, a whole bunch of fighting, a whole bunch of conflict because we knew the rules going in. I knew if I went over to the hilltop, I need to move a certain way because I'm not from the hilltop.
And respect the rules
and
of that
respect
area.
the rules, right?
Especially Brittany Hills. I remember you couldn't go play basketball up there after a certain time, for sure.
Right.
But you knew that.
You knew that. And, going to some other places where we're not familiar with that culture. And it could be one neighborhood over. You just don't operate a certain way. And I don't know if kids are seeing that. They're coming from different parts of town and beef has happened online. Beef that's happened at a football or basketball game. That translates. Growing up, sometimes, you step on the shoe, it might turn into a thing. Now, the equivalent of that feels like it's happening over and over again. And it's only a small amount of kids. It's not a lot. I was talking to a young woman at one of the schools, one of the West Side schools. She said, most of us aren't there for that. 99% of us, just a few, and then everybody is voyeurs. Now we want to see, now we want to get involved. I just don't know if they have the respect for each other to not get involved with those things or let social media or let beef get to the point where I'm going to pull a weapon or I'm going to fight you or I'm going to make this whole experience bad for everyone else. But another young man said, we all want to be in the same spaces together. We all want to have fun too, but so many of us come together and they're not in the right mindset of just having fun and being a kid. They want to be tough. They want to be hard. They want to take I'm a big fan of hip hop. 50, 40 plus years listening to this music. I never thought I'm now to the point I can realize that the music does have a negative impact in some cases. And some of these young folks are taking that literally when they're getting in these big spaces. Whether they're rushing a store or rushing an event or... But I don't know the answer to it right now, to be honest with you. I just don't know.
And it looks different, I think, for every young person. Some of the young people I've asked, similar... some of them, they're just trying to get streams, views, going viral has become a huge aspiration for many of these young people where they think their career will be, content creating. And it's not that that's not a viable career. We've seen where people are able to really make a career, but understanding that you're making a career of being viral for negative things. And those are that's to your point where, I think as we know, young people, their frontal lobes are not fully developed yet. They still are not thinking about things from that rational lens. But, I have a 17-year-old daughter, and when stuff like this happens, I don't know why I always feel like I need to go in her room. I'm like, I'm like, who is this? What, do you know this person? She's looking at me like I'm crazy. But, but then I get to listen from her, her perspective. And she's like, Mom, a lot of these kids just do this for views. They do this, to be able to, have a social media presence. If they have that fight on their page, or if they have not, it's not necessarily that they went down there for that intention, but if it breaks out, being able to stay there in that space, to be able to capture it on, on
like
your
a journalist.
phone. Yeah, like, suddenly, and so, so it's a multi-dimensional, I think there's so many different potential reasons, and the solutions, I think, is where most of us are in this space of like what can be done. And I've been seeing a lot of folks saying, well, charge the parents. It should be the parents. And I think parents do play a huge role, like knowing where your kids are. But then also sometimes these kids are very creative in telling you, I'm going to, so-and-so's house, or I'm going to a festival. Like in my mind, you tell me you're going to a festival. I'm like, great, have fun. Do you need money? Not necessarily thinking that there was some invitation online about let's take over this particular festival. So I think it's one of those things where parents have to be involved. We have to be able to be part of the solution. But some of this is also like, how do we connect as parents so that there is more of an awareness, like, oh, you know that there's supposed to be something happening there, then maybe that's my signal not to let my kid go. Otherwise, I'm thinking they just going to a festival and it's just going to be that summer, that summer vibe.
Fun.
Right, exactly. Like, go ahead, catch a vibe. I'll see you at, 10 o'clock.
Come with you.
Not thinking what happens in these situations. And I've found that as parents, especially, like I have a teenage daughter, I'm anxious every time she leaves. And there are a lot of things that I have to deny her from being able to go experience because I am so rooted in what's happening. And, I see the police reports. I've worked for the district. And so it's just like, I'm so aware that it's also like, I feel like I'm putting a little bit of that projection of like, well, something could happen. And it's hard for young people sometimes just to be young people when you are so aware of all the potential things that can go wrong. And so I think that's one of those things that as parents, we have to navigate that balance. I don't know that there's an exact formula to that. But I think that, for many of us who are involved, are aware, like we still can't find that balance of like, when do we let them go? When do we engage? When do we not engage? Because, it's day by day, event by event. And as parents, we're just trying to manage and do the best that we can.
Now, I remember growing up, because I'm a Gen Xer. Are you all Gen Xers?
No, I think I'm a millennial. I just searched that.
So I know. I remember growing up, our parents didn't know where we were.
Right, because you didn't have tracking, you didn't have none of that.
You leave at 8 in the morning, you don't come back until, 7, 8. There used to be a commercial, I don't know if you all remember this. There used to be a commercial that came on TV. You can probably YouTube it. It's 10 o'clock, do you know where your kids are?
Do you know your kids are? I do remember that commercial,
I heard that.
I'm seeing that now on my social media feeds. It's like it's coming back. I said, wait a second, I remember that from 1980, 80 whatever, 86, 87. Do you know where your kids are?
Right.
And it's 10 o'clock and you got to be, but now it's like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and you're hearing about 13, 14-year-olds out running around. Like, wait a second.
Right.
That's a
Where are your
parental
parents?
thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's a mix. Well, my father was a little different. Like, he always knew where I was. And he was so strict. He wouldn't let me do a lot of things because he, being in a different country and not knowing some of the things. And he was just worried all the time. So I didn't get, as a girl, the same privilege, I think, as my brother.
Yeah.
It was more stricter for me. I could be out working till midnight, but I could not be out of the movies till midnight. So there were like specific rules. So I feel like some of that saved me a little bit from some of the craziness. But it did put a lot of pressure growing up. And now what I'm seeing, I think, as you guys were, we were talking about this, I saw the video and I didn't understand what was a takeover thing. But it's like the lack of village. So, growing up, in my country, like your neighbors knew you. If they saw you doing something, you were more afraid of the neighbors, I think, sometimes, or the people in your house, because you knew there were snitches. Like, they would go tell your parents. And then that would be like a total punishment that would come if your neighbors saw on you, which that was like the negative part. But the positive part was that they care enough to tell your parents about you and to keep you safe. So you always have eyes on you. Where now, like, we're not even connected to our neighbors. Right. We're not, even sometimes our own family. Like, so I feel like the disconnect of where the village has almost disappeared, you can see the correlation of when that started happening to where we're seeing kids just not having trusted adults in their life. And so I feel like maybe bringing the village back, we've been talking about this for a while now, but I feel like bringing the village back in some way, I think will help us solve some of this. As we're seeing also the increase of these things happening and youth feeling a little bit lost, we're also seeing the reduction of funding for programs that are supposed to help us keep our kids safe, to give them the skills they need, the funding or funds that they need to be safe in the summer. So I also feel like there's a correlation with that, with everything that is happening in our country and so many great organizations closing, not being able to provide free programming no more. I was in a prayer group and they're like, the summer programs are no longer free. Like, you now have to pay full amount. And who has that? The kids that need it the most don't have that. So I feel like some of the challenges is also what programs are available right now to help us, solve this issue. And, I feel like your program, our program are doing that, but we need more than that.
Absolutely.
We can solve the millions of kids that are out here in Columbus or in Ohio. So for those of you listening, if you have money or if you have little money, I think making a donation to organizations that are supporting youth right now is so important. So we have listeners from all over. Find an organization in your community, invest in them, whether it be your time, your money, your skills, because you don't know how big that could go. And you could be part of the solution, because we all can sit here and complain about the kids. We can all say, the things that are going wrong. We're very solution focused, or we will not be in this work. So there's some things that you can totally do to help, bring to solutions. So find those monies.
I agree 100%.
And that makes me think of a question for you, Adero. I mean, what would you say has been your greatest lesson as a CEO, leading through times of change and uncertainty? So in the space that you're in right now, as Maylin just indicated, we're seeing shortage in funding. We're seeing shortage in, I don't know if in volunteers in your particular capacity, but we have seen, kind of a drawback from even volunteerism at the level that, a lot of organizations are saying, like, finding mentors, finding coaches, people who used to have this excess time to be able to support, it's not as consistent as some other organizations or periods of time. I mean, so what would you say has been your greatest lesson, and what does that, look like for you day in and day out as you lead this large organization?
So after, 30 years, I had this epiphany, and I was talking with, who was I talking with about this? Another colleague here. It took me 30 years to figure this out. A lot of the things, when I became a lead, quote unquote leader, I was making decisions based off emotion. And for me, you thought I would have figured it out, that leading with emotion, responding to everything with emotion, did not always turn out well. Or I would have to backtrack. It caused more work and angst on me. Yeah, some things you're going to lead with emotion because you're passionate about the work, but I had to do a better job in being more practical and intentional and strategic, and taking a step back and thinking about any decision I had to make, whether it's a challenging one or one that's for the benefit of the growth of the organization, or a personnel issue or a personality issue. That's where I was like, man, I'm ready to just jump. And I get a lot of that from my mother. So I'm kind of this dual. I'm a Capricorn. I'm not the
balance.
The balance one. I'm more of I have my dad's personality where I'm kind of methodical, kind of stay cool, calm, collected, but then I have my mother's side. It's like, boom, jump out there, do what you got to do, forget about all the other stuff. And I was leaning more towards, and that part wasn't working as to the benefit of myself and type of leadership. So I was making decisions, and I finally came to this realization about 2 years ago when I came into this role. I said, I'm going to change this because it's a bigger organization, more reach, more students. I had to think about this in terms of funding, in terms of growth or scaling, in terms of leading a team of people. I had to changing my whole approach. Yeah, I was doing the leadership classes. I was doing the leadership cohorts. I was reading the books and watching the TED Talks, and all of those things were great, but I wasn't putting them into practice the way that was beneficial for my growth and the organization's growth. I think I've now finally cracked that code for me to make better decisions when it comes to how we want the organization to run, what my vision is. So being able to communicate it better and then have a strategic plan that can make it more operational for the benefit of all of us, even with the funding drying up and being more challenging. That's where I feel that my leadership has become much better. And it took me a while. It took me a long time to figure it out. And I can admit that. But I feel much better about it now. I'm not as stressed about everything. I can have more time to sit back and say, okay, I'm going to go with these 3 options. And the one that's the most emotional one, I'm not even going to consider it because it's not going to benefit anybody. It's just going to make me angrier or more stressed or make the wrong decision. And so when funding, you talk about the funding, when the funding's dried up, okay, that impacts your staffing. It impacts the number of kids, all the schools we're working with.
Right.
You know, when their funding, when like the school district's funding goes a little left, then we have to navigate in a different way. And sometimes we may have to, we have to get smaller, or we have to do things that we don't want to do because these are people's livelihoods that are doing this work because they love it, not because they're getting these big salaries. Like you with Femergy, you all are doing the work because you love it.
Absolutely.
And the impact you see on the young people. And you know, I've seen a lot of your stuff. The outcomes and the data shows that it works. So why wouldn't you put money into a group like Femergy and the stories that the young people share from what you're doing? That for me, it helps build up, okay, I did make the right decision, or we are going in the right direction because the schools are happy, the principals are satisfied, the teachers are like, oh, this is a service that's really cool. And the families, you talk about families, having the interaction with families, with our people in the schools, and then getting the students. When I go into the schools and I hear the young people talk about, you know, Miss Christina, Miss Maylin, they helped me out with this, they helped me out with that. We need them here. Yeah. So that helps fuel my desire to continue in this work and my leadership journey. The ups and downs that I've had to deal with, the wins and quite a few losses.
Yes. When you make decisions, you said something so important. You said not so much emotion, right? Because we're passionate people.
True.
1,000%. Or we won't be in this work. There's no way. Do you use data to make decisions? So for those people right now listening that are in a very executive role or have to make tough decisions, if we're navigating away from the emotional, what other ways or tools do you use right now to make those decisions?
And can I add something? Because that's a great question. And I feel like I struggled with this as an executive board member for a large urban district. If you've been following me, you know what district I'm referring to. Because sometimes also the data-driven decisions are so critically important. However, we recognize that any implementation takes a period of time to have the results that you want to see. So I have always struggled with like, okay, I know what the data is showing right now, but is it too early to be, basing major decisions off of data, or do we want to create some level of consensus? Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Or is this a 1 year?
Phase evaluation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's always been, I feel like, a challenge in our leadership to look at how much is data driven, and then how much of that is that gut feeling, that passion you speak of, and then how much of it is this is the need right now, and at what point are we nimble enough to say, if this is what the community needs, how much do we want to like put our feet in the sand of saying like, no, we have to do it this way because this is the way we've always done it, or this is what we agreed to. Like, so it's like you almost have like that prong approach of like what's data, what's gut, and then what's really just meeting the needs of the community, or whether you're in a nonprofit space or working for a corporation, and you're forecasting whatever that business may be. How much of that is then also rooted in how do we just meet the needs of our demographic here and now, and it's not as necessarily tied to future forecasting decisions.
That's a great question because you do have to wrestle with that.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to get in the point where you're changing your program to meet a changing. This is one of the things that bothers me about Central Ohio is that we shift so much on what we're going to be focused on.
Right.
Is it housing? Is it early child care?
What's the hot word?
Yeah.
Those things are important, but
Right.
they're all important. But are we going to stick with something and let it play out over time? And we're going to put the resources behind it. So let's say it is resources for young women. We'll use Femergy, for example. What's an example of an outcome that you all have or a data point?
Graduation rates.
Graduation rates. So are we going to track these young people? Are we going to show what you do to get them to graduate on time? And then how do we get more young people to do this or to be involved? And what are the resources that the community is going to put? Because you've already shown that we've got 80%, 90% of our young women graduate on time to go to college or whatever that is. That's a key stat. It's very easy to understand, but do people want to put, well, what about the young kids? Well, they're important, but you got to think about the whole spectrum of what a young person's experience and how organizations are utilizing data for their particular part of that. If it's after school, is it your mentoring? Is it you're doing classes with young people to get them with their academics, or you're helping them with how to do college applications? Those can be some metrics that, one of the things I think I had to get better at was explaining the work more succinctly, even in a grant application, or we redid our marketing efforts. And I'm like, we need to make this, if I sit across from a school board member or a superintendent or a legislator, what can you understand in less than 5 minutes? And understand the impact and where I want you to put resources in and how much I need, frankly, how much I need to do this work.
Yeah.
And here's what it's going to take to do it. And here's what you're going to get out of it. We can show you that 90% of students graduate from our program if we work with them one-on-one for a school year, if they were off track, that type of thing. And you all could say the same thing. So getting people to understand that consistently without having a mission creep.
Right.
And being very clear, this is how much it's going to cost to do it, because it costs dollars to do this work.
Yeah, and time.
And time.
And it's human work. It's not, sometimes I think the business community, respectfully, they want that ROI. They want to know how many, and it's like, this is people work.
It's not AI.
Yeah, this is something that takes time. It takes intention, implementation.
Yeah.
And so, I appreciate your answer. And I appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you.
I feel like we could have interviewed you on so many additional topics, and we're at time. But certainly, I know that went by so quick.
Yeah.
But certainly, we would love to have you come back maybe in the fall, just to hear how things are going, or at the top of the year.
Sure.
Would love to learn, because there's so many more things that we would love to hear more about in terms of the work that you're leading. And as we wrap today, if you could leave educators, parents, business leaders, anybody listening to this message today about investing in young people, why that's important, what would it be?
Quick soundbite is our sort of tagline is being present matters. So I think if you can keep that in mind for working with young people, being present, whatever that looks like for you or for the organization, being present matters and relationships matter for doing this type of work.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, as always here at Femergy, we love to wrap up our episodes with intention. So it's bigger than you.
Thank you so much for listening today. We're excited, and we hope that you follow us on
Instagram, True Print for Life, YouTube channel, also True Print for Life. And make sure that you share, like, watch our videos. Make sure that you follow us on all streaming platforms.